Okay, this is the Daniel Seery Poetry Library, and we're going to be reading some haikus about Indiana Jones. Throw me the idol. Wicked fall to holy flames. I'll buy you a drink. Fast streets of Shanghai. Shiva made you fall from sky. Fortune and glory. A cross lost and found. A hard slap for blasphemy. Illumination. Refuge in the fridge. Follow the lines gods can read. Space between spaces. All 4 Indiana Jones movies, told in haiku form. I should have waited till the 5th one to read those. But like Star Wars, I read the 6th. One of these days I have to finish the Star Wars haikus are finished, but I just haven't read episodes 7, 8, and 9 to you folks. I've posted them online and on Instagram with photos of each poem. I've also written Star Trek haikus. There's a few other haiku series I want to do for a few other movie series. Indiana Jones has always been one of my favorites. I love Star Wars. Star Wars is the king for me in terms of these old fashion franchises. But Indiana Jones were a bunch of great movies. And the amazing thing to me now is people that are just coming to Indiana Jones or young kids that are experiencing for the first time, they could just watch these movies at home, all 4 of them. I like the 4th one. I know it's not good, but I still like it. Like Star Trek 5 is not good, but I like it. It's not quite Star Trek 5 bad, Crystal Skull, but it's not great. The original one I remember seeing on video disc. We rented it from a little video shop in the 80s, and it was incredible. I had never seen anything like it. I'm like, this is great. Like, they told me, you'll like this movie. Han Solo's in it. I'm like, all right, Han Solo's in it. I got to see it. And it was amazing. I love the music from John Williams. Spielberg's direction was great. You know, this again is at a time when I didn't see this in the theaters. I was way too young. So I didn't see it on video till about 83, 4 in there. And then I remembered years ago, what you kids won't understand is years ago when a movie used to be on TV, it was a very big deal because the VHS was a rental industry, not a sales industry. So videotapes used to cost $30, $40, $50 or more. So we rented the tape of Raiders a few times, but when we really got to see it as much as we wanted to was when it aired on TV. And what we did is tape it. Don't worry, Paramount, I bought the DVDs and I bought the Blu-rays, and I will buy the 4Ks next year. But we used to tape it off of TV and watch it over and over and over again. And it was edited, and it was, you know, not the complete movie. And it would have commercial breaks. We would usually pause them. I would try to. I got very fast draw at that, pausing it at the right moment. And that's how we saw these movies. Over and over and over again. We would see them maybe once on video as a rental, and then sometimes we couldn't even afford to rent a tape. Sometimes the money was so tight on a Friday night we couldn't rent a video. And our library didn't have a lot of VHS tapes. They had like the same 12 tapes that we watched over and over again. That's why I saw Star Trek 3 and High Anxiety about 200 times each. Because we'd go to the library to rent VHS tapes, and they would have like, well, I'm too young to see Alien, and I can't watch this movie, but let's rent High Anxiety again. Let's rent Star Trek 3 again. And that's why I can pretty much quote those movies line for line. They wouldn't take me. But the sequels were another story. We rented Temple of Doom. I remember eating pizza from Joy's. Don't look for it. It's not there. A little pizza place on Staten Island, Father Caponano Boulevard. And I remember eating this crunchy, burnt-up pizza, which I loved, and we're watching Indiana Jones of the Temple of Doom for the first time, and I had never seen anything like it. My brother saw it in theaters. They wouldn't take me. I was too young. And I remember watching it on the TV, and the minute Kate Capshaw walks out and it says Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, I'm like, what is this movie? This is the greatest thing ever. And she's singing, and I'm like, what is she singing? And she's singing in Chinese, and my brother's like, oh, it's anything goes, and she's singing it in Chinese. I'm like, why is she singing it in Chinese? He's like, because they're in Shanghai, you know? And Temple of Doom gets a bum rap, and at the time, critics didn't like it, except for Roger Ebert, who gave it 4 stars. Bravo, Roger. But I thought it's my favorite probably of the series because it's so different and it's so insane in its vision. And then Last Crusade was about that time. I was about 10, and that was the first Indiana Jones movie I saw in theaters. The problem with Last Crusade, and the entire summer of '89 for that fact, is that it felt like, and I love the movie very much, please don't get me wrong on this, but with the summer of '89, it sort of felt like leftovers. Ghostbusters 2, Star Trek 5, License to Kill, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It kind of felt like, well, this isn't the A game, but this is still great leftovers that we heated up. And that's what a lot of those movies felt like. Like, I remember sitting watching Ghostbusters 2 in theaters, which is a movie, again, I like it a lot, but it's not as good as the first one, but it's still a good movie. I remember sitting in the theater watching Ghostbusters 2 saying, man, this is good. But imagine how good it was to see Ghostbusters in theaters. And I felt the same way about Indiana Jones. I was sitting there watching Last Crusade saying, man, this is good. But imagine how great it must have been to watch Temple of Doom or Raiders. And I just sat watching Star Trek V saying, I hate my life. But, you know, I've grown to like Last Crusade a lot more now, especially after I really discovered Sean Connery. Because when I was a kid, I wasn't into James Bond. My parents wouldn't let me watch it because of all the sexy stuff. And even when I started to watch the James Bond movies when I was an adolescent, I'd rent these old crappy tapes that looked like garbage. And I'm like, gee, this is sort of boring. James Bond didn't really become a big thing in my life until DVD. Because when you see those movies digitally cleaned up and in widescreen, you're like, that's it. That's what everybody's been talking about all this time. Because I only saw these old tapes and it looked like garbage. Or it would play on TV. I remember watching Moonraker on TV and I'm like, I don't get this. Like, what is this about? And now, I definitely need a sip before this one, because we're going to talk about Crystal Skull. Holiday blend. Crystal Skull. There was a huge build-up for this movie. I was very excited for it. They were talking about this movie from the mid-'90s. I remember reading the Star Wars Insider, where Star Wars producer Rick McCallum was talking about the special editions that were coming into theaters in 1997. And they asked him about Indiana Jones 4, and he says, well, we have a great script. We just got to get everybody's schedule together. That was 97. The movie didn't come out till about 11 years later. And I remember seeing the trailer for it and being so excited. And there was a lot of stuff that looked silly about it, but I'm like, I don't care. I just want to see another Indiana Jones movie. And I loved it when I first saw it, especially the beginning. I thought the beginning was great. I love the refrigerator. I don't care what anybody says. I thought that was a great bit. The problem was the movie got sillier and sillier and sillier from that point on. Now, if that wasn't silly enough, the other stuff they did, like, I liked it a little bit more too because we all didn't have this thing against Shia LaBeouf that we have now. You know, he was kind of like, oh, the kid from Transformers, he's all right. But it was before everybody started to go like Nickelback on him, where suddenly, without warning, the whole world didn't like him anymore. And I don't mind him. I think he's an all right actor and, you know, whatever. But there was just the thing with the scene with the monkeys and the scene with the ants and the scorpions. And I'm like, this is getting, even like by George Lucas, I know he's going for a 50s B movie thing, but this is getting a little too much now. This is getting into like Ed Wood territory. But I still like it. The ending is really cheap. The aliens look terrible. Why is it that the aliens in Close Encounters in 1977 look so real and so lifelike, and the aliens in the Crystal Skull look absolutely the fakest aliens you've ever seen this side of Mac and me? Like, I don't know what they were going for. But I love Indiana Jones. I love the character. I don't think they should do a fifth movie. The best thing to do is to do a Disney Plus series with Chris Pratt as Indiana Jones and call it Indiana Jones: The War Years. Make it a 3 or 4 year series, 10 episodes each. At the end of, in the middle of season 2, I would introduce Captain America and the Red Skull, and I would have Indiana Jones team up with Captain America to fight the Red Skull. And that makes so much sense. And they own both characters, and we all want to see Chris Evans again. We all want to see him as Captain America again. Because I love Endgame, don't get me wrong, but we want more Captain America, and we want more Red Skull, and we want more Indiana Jones. Just do it. If The Mandalorian has taught us anything, just do it. See, that was what made Star Wars great, and that's something that the Star Wars prequels and that the Star Wars sequels have not yet realized. George Lucas's original thing of Star Wars was, if it's cool, do it. And the same thing with Indiana Jones, at least the first two, and a little bit of 3. If it's cool, do it. No matter what. Don't worry about explaining it. We'll explain it later. They didn't even have to explain how Boba Fett survived. I don't care how Boba Fett survived. I'm so glad he's there. If it's cool, do it. And that's what they should do for Indiana Jones. If they try to make it like this 80-year-old guy that's trying to pass the torch over to some young, probably a girl by now, I mean, I'm all for that if it's cool. If it's cool, do it. If it's not cool, don't do it. Just don't waste your time. So, we'll be back with more poems soon. Signing off.